Welcome back, dear friend. Tonight, we are going to journey far back in time to the heart of medieval history and explore the life of the knight. Who were these armored figures who rode into battle beneath colorful banners, sworn to codes of honor and service? What was it really like to be a knight in a world of castles, kings, and crusades? So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy the type of content that merges myth and mystery. And hey, let us know from where you're watching and what time it is for you right now. Sometimes our stories are better than sleep, and other times they help you dream louder. It's time now to dim the lights, turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's cover what we have for tonight together. Long ago, in the shadowed mist of early medieval Europe, the world was a place of constant change, of scattered kingdoms and rolling battlefields. It was a time long before modern cities, before railroads and paved roads, before the hum of electricity. Instead, the lands were stitched together in small kingdoms, fiefdoms, and scattered villages, each ruled by local lords who owed allegiance, sometimes reluctantly, to kings whose power was as fragile as the morning dew on the fields. In this patchwork of territories, the life of a knight first began, not as the shining, legendary figures we often imagine, but as practical, necessary warriors born from a world that demanded protection, loyalty, and courage. The birth of knighthood did not occur suddenly, like the flip of a switch or the drawing of a sword. No, it was a slow and careful shaping, molded by centuries of change, violence, and the gradual evolution of warfare and society. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, Europe was left fragmented, its great roads and infrastructure crumbling, its cities often abandoned, and its people vulnerable to raiders, bandits, and rival kingdoms. In this turbulent environment, those who could fight and who could defend the weak were not only valued, they were essential. At first, these warriors were not called knights. They were men who rode to war for their lords, often heavily armored with whatever chainmail or leather they could afford, carrying swords and spears and learning the brutal skills of mounted combat. Their loyalty was a currency, paid in land, wealth, or the promise of protection. Over time, as the culture of Europe stabilized and the feudal system took hold, these warriors began to take on a more defined role, both practical and symbolic. They became knights, figures sworn to a lord, trained in combat from boyhood, and gradually bound by an evolving sense of honor and duty. The early knight was as much a product of necessity as of aspiration. In a world without national armies, without standing forces, lords relied on the skill and loyalty of mounted warriors to defend their lands. Knights were mobile, heavily armored, and capable of striking terror into opponents, whether in open battle, in skirmishes along borders, or in the protection of castles and towns. Their presence alone could deter rebellion or raid. For a man on horseback, clad in mail and carrying a sword or lance, was a formidable figure, part warrior, part symbol, part instrument of authority. Yet, while practical concerns shaped the early knight, myth and legend began to weave themselves around this emerging class of warriors. Stories of heroic deeds, of men who could ride into battle against overwhelming odds, who upheld justice, and who protected the weak, began to circulate in the courts and around hearths. These stories were not yet formalized into the codes of chivalry that would define later centuries, but they planted the seeds of an ideal, a knight as more than a fighter, as someone who embodied courage, honor, and loyalty. The social structure of early medieval Europe made knights both necessary and prestigious. The feudal system, with its layered hierarchy of kings, lords, and vassals, created the perfect environment for knights to flourish. Kings needed loyal subjects to enforce their will across vast territories. Lords needed warriors to defend their castles and maintain order, and young noble boys, seeking both protection and prestige, found the path of knighthood both a duty and an opportunity. In those early days, a knight was intimately tied to his lord. His armor and weapons might be supplied by his master. His sustenance and status came from his service. This bond was formalized in the oath of fealty, solemn promise that the knight would serve faithfully, defend the lord's lands, and follow orders without question. In return, the knight received protection, the right to bear arms, and sometimes land or titles of his own. It was a reciprocal relationship, a contract of honor and survival, binding warrior to lord in ways both practical and deeply personal. The life of the early knight was not glamorous, despite what stories would later tell. It was hard, often dangerous, and filled with long periods of preparation, training, and waiting. A knight might spend months patrolling the borders of his lord's lands, keeping watch for raiders or rival forces. He might travel great distances on horseback, delivering messages, negotiating alliances, or joining larger armies in battle. And yet, even in these practical duties, there was room for ceremony, for ritual, and for the kind of pageantry that would later become associated with chivalry. Over time, as warfare and society evolved, the role of the knight became more formalized. Mounted combat became specialized. The use of heavy armor and powerful war horses became standard. Training methods were refined, creating a system where boys were groomed from childhood to become the ideal warrior. The combination of skill, loyalty, and personal valor became codified into the archetype of the knight, a figure who was as much a product of society as he was a product of war. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the birth of knighthood is the way it blends reality with legend. The earliest knights were practical men of war, but over the centuries, stories grew around them, stories of heroic deeds, of battles won against impossible odds, of loyalty and honor tested in fire. These tales were told by minstrels and chroniclers, passed from court to court, and eventually entered the fabric of European culture. They created the image of the knight that we often imagine today, not only a warrior, but a symbol, a protector, a dream of courage and nobility set against the harsh realities of medieval life. As the centuries passed, this image became more structured. The ideals that began as whispers in castles and villages eventually solidified into codes of conduct, rules for personal behavior, and expectations for how knights should interact with their lords, their peers, and the common people. Yet, it all began in the fog of a chaotic world where loyalty, skill, and courage were not just admirable qualities, they were the very things that allowed a boy to survive, to rise, and to become a knight. And so, dear friend, when we look back to the birth of knighthood, we see more than just warriors in armor. We see a reflection of human society itself, evolving in response to danger, opportunity, and the need for order. We see the slow shaping of an ideal that would capture imaginations for centuries, and we see the beginning of a story that will continue through battles, ceremonies, tournaments, and legends, guiding us into a world both real and magical, where the knight was born as much from necessity as from dreams of honor. As your eyes grow heavy, imagine a young boy of 7 walking through the corridors of a great stone hall, listening to the echoes of armored footsteps, learning to care for horses, and dreaming quietly of the day he might ride into battle. Picture the flickering light of torches, the scent of leather and metal, the distant sound of swords clashing in training fields. This is the world in which knights were born, a world of both hardship and wonder, of loyalty and courage, of beginnings that would echo across the centuries. And in that quiet, slow unfolding of history, let yourself drift, following the soft rhythm of a time long past, as the story of knighthood begins to take shape, as the first warriors learn their craft, as legends quietly stir in the hearts of those who would one day wear armor and ride into memory itself. In the gentle, rolling hills and misty valleys of medieval Europe, society was shaped by a web of relationships, obligations, and promises, as delicate and intricate as the threads of a spider's web glistening in the morning sun. This was the world of feudalism, the framework that gave the knight his place and purpose, the invisible yet unbreakable lines that bound kings, lords, and vassals together. Understanding feudalism is key to understanding the life of a knight, for it was within this system that the knight's duties, privileges, and very identity were defined. Feudalism was not a written law or a single uniform structure. It was a system of customs, traditions, and mutual agreements passed down through generations and adapted to local needs. At its heart, it was a system of loyalty and service, a pyramid of responsibilities that extended from the king at the top to the peasants and serfs at the base. The king, often more a figure of symbolic authority than a centralized ruler, relied on powerful lords to govern territories, enforce justice, and raise armies when danger loomed. In turn, lords depended on knights, skilled, armored warriors mounted on powerful horses, to protect their lands, enforce their authority, and serve as the physical expression of their power. To be a knight within this structure was to occupy a space both practical and prestigious. Knights were not peasants. Their birth, wealth, and training set them apart. Yet they were not at the very pinnacle of society either. They were servants and vassals, bound by oath to a lord, yet charged with defending that lord's honor and holdings. Their loyalty was a form of currency, often sealed with a solemn ceremony and an oath that could not be broken without shame. In a world where trust was fragile and alliances shifted like clouds across the sky, a knight's promise was more valuable than gold, for it guaranteed protection, skill, and the willingness to face danger without hesitation. The daily reality of this system was both structured and demanding. A knight's obligations were not limited to the battlefield. He was expected to manage lands, oversee peasants, and ensure that his lord's decrees were enforced. This could mean inspecting the boundaries of farmland, mediating disputes between villagers, or patrolling roads for bandits. Even in times of peace, a knight's duties were never entirely idle. He maintained his weapons, trained himself and any squires under his care, and remained ready to ride at a moment's notice. In return, the knight received privileges that distinguished him from the common people. He might be granted a portion of land, called a fief, which provided income and sustenance. He had the right to bear arms, to ride his horse, and to participate in the tournaments and ceremonies that marked the rhythm of noble life. He lived within the protective orbit of a castle or a fortified manor, surrounded by other warriors, servants, and advisors, yet always mindful of the fragile balance between honor, duty, and survival. Feudalism also shaped the knight's identity through relationships that extended beyond mere obligation. A knight's loyalty to his lord was expected to be absolute, but it was often tempered by bonds of friendship, kinship, and shared experience with other knights. These bonds were forged in training fields, on campaign, and sometimes in the quiet moments beside the fire when stories were told and strategies debated. The life of a knight was thus both communal and hierarchical, a delicate dance of obedience and camaraderie, where honor was constantly measured by both action and reputation. This structure also extended to matters of justice and governance. Knights were often called upon to serve as enforcers of their lord's will, ensuring that laws were upheld and that disputes were settled according to custom. They could act as judges in local conflicts, mediators in disputes between vassals, and protectors of the weak against those who might exploit them. In this way, a knight was not only a warrior, but also a pillar of order, a living embodiment of the Lord's authority in the surrounding lands. The connection between feudalism and warfare was particularly important. When a lord needed to raise an army, he relied on knights to muster troops, lead infantry, and provide strategic advantage on the battlefield. Knights were the elite force, trained to fight on horseback, to use lances, swords, and shields with precision, and to inspire both fear and respect. Their presence could turn the tide of a skirmish or campaign, and their reputation often preceded them, striking dread into the hearts of enemies and reassurance into the hearts of allies. Yet the life of a knight within feudalism was not merely one of duty and battle. The system also created space for the development of ideals, rituals, and culture. The relationships that bound knight to lord, lord to king, and knight to knight formed the foundation for the later codification of chivalry. Feudal obligations, with their blend of loyalty, service, and reward, became intertwined with ideas of honor, justice, and protection of the weak. A knight's identity was thus both functional and aspirational, a man trained to fight and serve, but also one whose actions were measured against ideals that transcended mere survival. In the quiet moments when the clangor of armor was replaced by the hush of a candle-lit hall, a knight would reflect on these bonds and duties. The weight of his armor was mirrored by the weight of his responsibilities. The strength of his horse echoed the support of his lord and peers. He lived within a system that demanded courage, wisdom, and discipline, and yet also offered recognition, respect, and the possibility of glory. Every patrol, every training session, every battle was a thread in a larger tapestry, weaving him into the social, political, and moral fabric of his world. Feudalism, in essence, gave knights their purpose, their structure, and their identity. It shaped not only how they fought, but also how they thought, how they related to others, and how they understood themselves. Within this system, the knight became both protector and participant in a grand, hierarchical dance, a dance that balanced loyalty and power, duty and aspiration, honor and survival. As you listen, imagine the gentle cadence of life in a feudal lordship. Picture a castle perched on a hill, its stone walls glistening in the morning mist. Knights ride along winding paths, their armor catching the soft light, their horses' hooves muffled by the damp earth. Inside the great hall, banners hang, servants move quietly, and lords discuss matters of land, law, and strategy. And within this rhythm, the knight exists, fully immersed in a world where loyalty is life, service is honor, and every action is a step in the intricate waltz of feudal society. Allow yourself to feel the calmness of this world, the slow, steady rhythm of duty and purpose, the gentle order of medieval life. The knight's place in feudalism is not only historical fact, it is a story of balance, structure, and human connection, one that unfolds quietly and steadily, like the soft flicker of candlelight in a vast stone hall. And as you drift with this story, let the rhythm of the night's world guide you deeper into rest, deeper into the dreamlike echoes of a time long past where loyalty and courage, service and honor shaped the very essence of life. In the soft, misty mornings of medieval lands, long before the sun crests over the horizon and the village stirs to life, a young boy might begin a journey that would shape him for the rest of his days. This was the path of becoming a knight, a transformation that was neither quick nor easy, but steady, patient, and deliberate, like water slowly carving a stone. To understand the life of a knight, we must first understand that he was not born fully formed, nor was his path one of simple inheritance. The making of a knight was a careful, decades-long process, a blend of training, education, moral shaping, and preparation for the responsibilities he would one day carry. The journey often began in childhood, usually around the age of 7, when a boy of noble birth was sent away from his family home. This departure was not a loss, but a necessary step. He would enter the household of another noble, sometimes a distant relative, sometimes a family ally, where he would serve as a page. In this new environment, the boy's life became one of discipline, learning, and observation. He began with small duties, often menial but essential, learning to serve others while quietly absorbing the habits, manners, and expectations of noble life. A page's duties might seem simple at first, carrying messages, tending to the lord's household, or assisting in the care of horses. Yet these tasks were far from trivial. Each chore was a lesson in responsibility, attention, and patience. A dropped message or neglected horse could have consequences, teaching the boy that careful, thoughtful action was as important as skill with a sword. Through these small tasks, the future knight learned humility, diligence, and the quiet virtues that would guide him through later trials. But life as a page was also rich with learning beyond mere chores. Education in this era for noble children was often limited, yet important. A young boy would learn reading, writing, basic arithmetic, and often the history and laws of the land. These lessons were interwoven with stories of valor, of legendary heroes, of battles won and lost, and of knights who had upheld honor and loyalty in the most trying circumstances. These stories were not simply entertainment, they were instruction, teaching moral lessons and the ideals to which the boy would one day aspire. The physical training of a page was equally important. Boys learned to ride horses, often beginning with gentle, smaller mounts, before progressing to larger, more spirited steeds. They practiced balance, endurance, and the basic skills that would allow them to become effective warriors in the years ahead. Early sword practice often began with wooden weapons, light enough for a child to wield, yet challenging enough to teach coordination, precision, and timing. Archery, wrestling, and even swimming could become part of this early training, each skill adding to the boy's growing foundation in preparation for the life of a knight. As the boy matured, usually around the age of 14, he would transition from page to squire, a stage of apprenticeship that brought him closer to the realities of knighthood. The squire's life was more demanding, more dangerous, and more directly tied to the work and habits of a fully trained knight. A squire would serve a specific knight, often following him into battle, carrying his armor, tending to his weapons, and learning through direct observation and participation. The lessons were no longer theoretical, they were practical, immediate, and sometimes terrifying in their intensity. A squire learned the language of the battlefield, the strategies and tactics that allowed a single armored figure on horseback to command respect, influence outcomes, and survive in the chaos of combat. He learned to maintain weapons, to sharpen blades, and to care for armor so that it could function properly when the time of need arrived. He learned the care and handling of war horses, massive destriers, trained to charge and to endure the weight of a fully armored rider. These lessons were both technical and emotional, teaching patience, responsibility, and an understanding of the close bond between knight and horse. But the making of a knight was not purely physical. A squire was expected to internalize the ideals of conduct that would later be codified into the code of chivalry. He observed how a knight treated his lord, how he interacted with peers, and how he respected those of lower station. Courage, honor, loyalty, and courtesy were not abstract virtues. They were lived, demonstrated in behavior, and tested through experience. The squire's world was a slow immersion into these values, a careful shaping of character alongside skill. In moments of rest, a squire might sit by the fire and listen to tales of knights past, stories of bravery, cunning, and sacrifice. The soft glow of the hearth, the crackle of wood, and the quiet voices of storytellers created a rhythm that seeped into the boy's consciousness, instilling ideals, dreams, and aspirations. He imagined himself riding into battle, his banner flying, his sword gleaming, and in these quiet hours, the future knight's identity began to crystallize. The transition from squire to knight was not guaranteed. It was a rite of passage, a test of both ability and character. Only those who demonstrated courage in training, skill in handling weapons and horses, loyalty to their lord, and adherence to the emerging moral code could be considered worthy of knighthood. This path often required years of patient effort, gradual skill acquisition, and quiet reflection. Success was marked not by a single act, but by a consistent demonstration of readiness and integrity over time. When a squire was finally deemed worthy, the ceremony of knighthood awaited, a sacred and solemn moment that transformed boy into warrior, apprentice into protector. The night before the ceremony, the squire would spend time in prayer, reflecting on his responsibilities, seeking strength and guidance. A ritual bath symbolized purification and the shedding of childhood, the donning of special garments, sometimes white and red to signify purity and readiness to sacrifice, marked his transformation. And then, in a hall filled with the quiet presence of lords, priests, and fellow warriors, the squire would kneel. The lord or knight would touch his shoulders with the flat of a sword, saying words that echoed across generations, a final acknowledgement that the boy had become a knight. This ceremony was not mere formality, it was a tangible recognition of skill, character, and readiness to bear the weight of both armor and responsibility. The making of a knight was thus a long, immersive journey. It began in childhood, grew through years of learning, observation, and service, and culminated in a ceremony that marked both an ending and a beginning. It was a process that shaped not only the body, but the mind, the spirit, and the place of the individual within society. The knight emerged from this journey not as a mere fighter, but as a figure of discipline, loyalty, and emerging ideals, ready to navigate the complex world of feudal society, to serve, protect, and inspire. As your mind drifts with this story, imagine the boy moving quietly through the corridors of a great stone castle, wooden practice sword in hand, the scent of horses in the stables, the soft light of dawn spilling through high windows. Hear the whispers of training, the encouragement of mentors, the quiet moments of reflection by a hearth. Feel the gradual shaping of skill and character, the slow, patient growth that transforms a boy into a squire and then into a knight, ready to face both the beauty and the harshness of the medieval world. Allow this rhythm to lull you, the steady, deliberate unfolding of years, the gentle shaping of a young warrior's life, the slow emergence of courage, skill, and honor. With each step, each lesson, each quiet night of reflection, the night takes form, not in haste, but with care, patience, and purpose. And as you follow this journey in your mind, let yourself drift into calm, imagining the quiet dedication, the soft glow of candlelight, and the promise of transformation that defines the making of a knight. In the quiet mornings of a medieval castle, before the first light of dawn crests the horizon, and the village below stirs to life, a young boy begins his journey in the world of knighthood. He is small, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, and yet he is already stepping into a life that will shape him for decades to come. This stage of his life, the life of a page, is the gentle, patient beginning of a path that will eventually lead to knighthood. And though the days are filled with work and learning, there is a certain rhythm, a quiet beauty, in the gradual shaping of the boy into a future warrior, observer of courtly life, and keeper of noble values. Life as a page is not easy, though it may appear simple to the outsider. The boy is sent away from his family, sometimes across distant lands, into the household of another noble. Here, in the echoing halls and quiet courtyards of a castle, he begins a rigorous, disciplined routine that blends duty, education, and early training. The page learns to serve, not merely as an act of obedience, but as a lesson in humility and respect, carrying messages, assisting in the household, attending to guests, and running errands. are all part of the daily rhythms. Each task, no matter how small, teaches patience, responsibility, and careful attention to detail. A page's world is rich in sensory experiences: the scent of polished wood, the tang of metal from armor stored in the halls, the earthy smell of horses in the stables. All of it becomes familiar, part of the fabric of his life. He moves quietly through corridors that echo with the footsteps of servants and knights, observes the careful arrangements of feasts, and learns the unspoken codes of behavior expected in noble society. Every gesture, every word carries meaning, and the young boy absorbs these lessons slowly, imprinting them into his memory. Education for a page is both practical and moral. He may learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, gaining the skills needed to manage estates and communicate effectively in the world he will one day navigate. But he also learns stories, stories of legendary knights, of battles won and lost, of courage, loyalty, and honor. These stories are more than entertainment. They are moral instruction, planting seeds of aspiration that will grow over the years. They teach him the values that he will one day embody: the courage to face danger, the patience to serve faithfully, and the wisdom to act honorably. Physical training is another vital part of a page's life. At first, it may be gentle: running, climbing, learning to balance, and mastering the movements of a young horse. Wooden swords and padded shields become familiar extensions of his arms, introducing him to the rhythm and discipline of combat. Archery lessons may begin with light bows, and wrestling or other forms of hand-to-hand practice build strength and agility. These exercises are not merely play, they are the foundation for the skills that will later make him a competent and confident warrior. A page also learns to observe the ways of knights and lords. He watches their movements, the grace with which they carry themselves, the precision with which they handle weapons, and the quiet authority they wield in court and on the battlefield. Observation becomes as important as practice, for in watching, he begins to internalize the patterns of behavior, the gestures of respect, and the subtleties of leadership and diplomacy. The young boy is learning not only to fight, but to think, to anticipate, and to act with presence and awareness. Another aspect of life as a page is the care of horses and equipment. From an early age, the boy learns to groom, feed, and saddle horses, to clean tack, and maintain weapons and armor. These tasks teach responsibility and instill a sense of connection to the living and inanimate tools of a knight's trade. The boy begins to understand that a knight's strength is not solely in his skill, but in his careful attention to preparation, the harmony between man, horse, and weapon. Despite the duties, there is also room for wonder, imagination, and quiet reflection. Evenings may be spent by the fire, listening to tales told by older servants, squires, or knights returning from training or battle. In these moments, the page imagines distant lands, heroic deeds, and the possibilities of the life that awaits him. These stories and quiet hours are essential. They nurture the spirit, fuel ambition, and teach the values of patience, courage, and loyalty that will guide him in the years ahead. Life as a page is also a period of social learning. He observes interactions between knights, lords, and ladies of the court. He learns etiquette, the careful dance of speech, and gesture that defines noble society, how to bow, when to speak, and how to address those of higher status are lessons absorbed slowly, like the soft echo of music in a hall, becoming instinctive over time. These lessons may seem subtle, but they are essential. A knight must navigate not only the chaos of battle, but also the subtleties of diplomacy, loyalty, and reputation. As the boy grows, he begins to take on more complex responsibilities. He may assist in training younger pages, participate in early exercises with wooden weapons, or be entrusted with small messages or errands that require discretion. Each new responsibility is a quiet test of maturity, judgment, and reliability. The page begins to understand that knighthood is not only about courage or strength, but also about steadiness, attention to duty, and the trust that others place in him. The life of a page is shaped by rhythm and repetition. Days are filled with structured routines, chores, lessons, training, observation, and reflection. Each day builds upon the last, each action laying another stone in the foundation of skill, discipline, and character. It is slow, deliberate, and sometimes monotonous. Yet this repetition is what transforms the boy into someone capable of the responsibilities that lie ahead. In quiet moments, the page may walk through castle gardens or courtyards, listening to the distant clatter of armor, the neighing of horses, or the whispering wind through stone battlements. These moments, when the world seems to pause, allow the boy to reflect, to internalize the lessons of service, duty, and observation. They teach patience, a quiet attentiveness, and the ability to find calm in a world that will later demand courage under fire. As you imagine this, picture the soft light of dawn spilling across stone walls, illuminating corridors lined with banners and suits of armor. Hear the gentle rustle of a page's footsteps, the careful brushing of a horse's coat, the murmur of voices in distant halls. Feel the rhythm of this life, slow and steady, building strength, skill, and character. The page moves forward in small, deliberate steps, each one shaping him for the future, preparing him to become a squire, and eventually a knight. Life as a page is a quiet, formative chapter filled with small lessons, gentle discipline, and the nurturing of dreams. It is a world of service and observation, of learning and reflection, of slowly growing into the potential that will one day be realized in armor, on horseback, with sword in hand. And as your mind drifts with this story, let the rhythm of his days, the soft cadence of training and learning, and the quiet beauty of a castle morning carry you deeper into calm, into rest, and into the gentle unfolding of dreams. As the page grows older, usually around the age of 14, he steps into a new phase of life, one both heavier and more demanding, the life of a squire. No longer a young observer, he now becomes an apprentice, closely bound to a knight, carrying not only equipment and weapons, but also the weight of expectation, responsibility, and the gradual shaping of his character into that of a full-fledged knight. This stage is often referred to as the squire's burden, not merely because of the physical labor it entails, but because of the emotional, moral, and social demands that accompany it. A squire's days begin before dawn. The first light of morning barely touches the stone walls of the castle when he rises, preparing himself for a day that will test strength, endurance, patience, and loyalty. His first duty is often to the armor and weapons of the knight he serves, the clang and scrape of polishing swords, the careful oiling of hinges on armor, and the meticulous inspection of chainmail become the rhythm of his morning. Each task requires attention to detail, for a single flaw in armor could mean injury or even death on the battlefield. In these early hours, the squire learns the intimate connection between preparation and survival, the lesson that care and diligence are as vital as courage. The care of horses is another crucial responsibility. A knight's destrier, powerful and imposing, is trained for war and must be handled with skill and patience. The squire feeds, brushes, saddles, and reins these massive creatures, forming a bond that will be essential in combat. He learns to anticipate the movements of the horse, to calm it in moments of stress, and to ride with a growing sense of balance and confidence. In these quiet, tactile interactions, the squire gains not only practical skill, but also a deeper understanding of trust, responsibility, and the unspoken dialogue between man and animal. Alongside these duties, the squire continues to develop his combat skills. Wooden swords give way to lighter steel practice blades. He learns to wield the lance, to engage in mock battles, and to respond instinctively to the chaos of simulated combat. Each day, he practices footwork, swordplay, and horsemanship, slowly building strength, coordination, and endurance. Archery and other martial arts may also be included in his training. The squire's life is physically demanding, yet the repetition and rhythm of these exercises instill discipline and focus, qualities that will serve him far beyond the battlefield. But the life of a squire is not purely physical. Moral and social training become increasingly important. A squire observes his knight in courtly settings, learning diplomacy, courtesy, and the subtle art of negotiation. He sees how his master treats other nobles, servants, and the people of the land, absorbing lessons in justice, patience, and honor. Courtesy is drilled alongside swordsmanship, and humility alongside bravery. These lessons are slow and subtle, but over time, they form the foundation for a knight who is not only strong and skilled, but wise, respected, and principled. The squire also accompanies his knight to tournaments, journeys, and occasionally battles. These experiences are both exhilarating and sobering. In tournaments, the squire witnesses the skill and daring of experienced knights, learning the strategies of combat, the timing of a charge, and the art of defending oneself in the chaos of clashing lances. He observes the subtleties of honor and reputation, understanding that victory is not measured solely in skill, but also in conduct, fairness, and courage. When the squire accompanies his knight to war, the lessons become more immediate and more grave. He carries armor, shields, and weapons, supports his knight during preparation, and sometimes serves as a messenger in the heat of battle. He experiences the smells of horses, sweat, and the clash of metal, the shouts and cries of warriors, and the tense anticipation before combat. These moments teach resilience, courage, and the ability to remain composed under pressure, reinforcing the idea that knighthood is not only about skill, but also about steadiness of mind and spirit. The squire also learns the importance of loyalty and observation. He watches how his knight interacts with allies and adversaries, how he makes decisions in times of stress, and how he maintains honor even in difficult circumstances. The squire begins to internalize these lessons, understanding that knighthood is as much about moral fortitude and social responsibility as it is about swordplay or horseback skill. He learns to carry the reputation of his master with care, knowing that the actions of one can reflect on both. Education continues as well, often in the form of reading, writing, and knowledge of laws, heraldry, and history. A squire might learn to read maps, understand the structure of armies, or write letters for his master. These skills are essential, for a knight is expected to navigate both the battlefield and the court, to advise his lord, and to uphold the laws and customs of his time. The squire's mind, like his body, is being trained to handle the responsibilities and complexities of a knight's life. As the squire matures, he gradually takes on more responsibility. He may be entrusted with smaller missions, such as escorting messengers, scouting ahead, or delivering orders. These tasks test judgment, courage, and reliability. Success is measured not only in completion, but also in the manner of execution, quiet diligence, respect for duty, and the calm application of skill. Each experience, each responsibility, slowly shapes the squire's character, preparing him for the moment when he will stand before a lord and be judged worthy of knighthood. The burden of the squire is thus both physical and psychological. He carries the weight of armor, weapons, and horses, but he also bears the weight of expectations, ideals, and the slowly forming code of honor. He is tested daily, not only in skill, but in temperament, patience, and understanding of the world around him. It is a demanding life, yet one that, when followed faithfully, shapes a boy into a man capable of carrying the responsibilities of knighthood with dignity and courage. In quiet moments, the squire may walk the castle grounds, feeling the soft touch of dawn on stone walls, the rustle of leaves in the courtyard, and the distant echoes of training in the fields. These are moments of reflection when he contemplates his progress, the lessons learned, and the path that still lies ahead. The squire begins to dream of the day he will kneel in the ceremony of knighthood, to feel the sword touch his shoulders, and to step into a world of service, honor, and battle. Allow yourself to drift with this vision. Picture the squire tending the destrier, polishing armor in the quiet hall, practicing sword play under the soft glow of early morning. Hear the rhythm of his life, the cadence of duty, learning, and reflection, and feel the gentle shaping of his character as the days unfold. This is the squire's burden, heavy, demanding, yet beautiful in its patience, in its discipline, and in its promise of transformation. And as you follow his journey, let your own mind relax, letting the slow, steady rhythm of preparation, loyalty, and growth carry you deeper into calm, rest, and quiet dreams. After years of patient training, observation, and service, the squire approaches the moment that will define his transition from apprentice to knight. This moment, the ceremony of knighthood, is not merely a formality, but a profound, almost sacred rite, steeped in tradition, symbolism, and the quiet gravity of responsibility. It is the culmination of a long journey where the lessons of childhood, The burdens of apprenticeship and the ideals of honor converge to create a transformation as tangible as it is emotional. The night before the ceremony, the squire prepares himself in solitude. He bathes, often in a ritualized act of purification, washing away not only the dust and sweat of training, but also the doubts, fears, and inexperience of youth. The water is warm, the scent of herbs and oils lingering, and the squire reflects on the journey that has brought him here. In these quiet hours, he prays or meditates, seeking guidance, courage, and clarity of purpose. The flickering light of candles or a small hearth casts gentle shadows, and the world seems to hold its breath in anticipation of the next day. When the morning arrives, the castle is filled with a soft, expectant energy. Lords, knights, clergy, and sometimes the family of the squire gather in the great hall or a chapel, their presence both ceremonial and supportive. The air is heavy with incense, the scent mingling with polished wood, leather, and the faint tang of metal from armor and weapons. Banners hang from walls and rafters, marking the solemnity and grandeur of the occasion. Every detail, from the arrangement of chairs to the placement of weapons, carries meaning, reinforcing the gravity of the moment. The squire dons special garments, often white to symbolize purity, with touches of red or gold, representing courage, sacrifice, and loyalty. Each piece is carefully adjusted, the fabric soft yet weighty with symbolism. The squire moves slowly, deliberately, feeling the significance of each layer as a tangible reminder that he is stepping into a new life. He carries himself with quiet reverence, mindful of the eyes upon him and the responsibilities he is about to assume. At the center of the ceremony, the squire kneels before the Lord, who may be a family member, mentor, or local noble, often with a priest or clergyman presiding. The Lord, holding a sword, touches the squire's shoulders, gently but firmly, repeating words that have echoed across generations: a blessing, a charge, a recognition that this boy has become a knight. This act, simple in its motion but profound in its meaning, represents both the conferring of status and the imposition of responsibility. The squire rises, now a knight, bearing not only a title, but a duty that will shape every aspect of his life. The ceremony often includes additional symbolic gestures. A kiss or embrace may signify loyalty and fraternity, connecting the new knight to the long line of those who came before. The presentation of weapons, the sword, the shield, sometimes a banner or crest, represents the tangible tools of knighthood and the moral weight they carry. Each weapon is a reminder that skill alone is not enough. The knight must wield them with honor, courage, and wisdom. Music and chants often accompany the ceremony, their gentle, steady rhythms creating a sense of timeless continuity. The voices of priests, minstrels, or attendants echo through stone halls, weaving a tapestry of sound that binds past, present, and future. The young knight listens, internalizing the cadence, the solemnity, and the ritualistic beauty of the moment. He is both participant and observer, aware that he now belongs to a tradition older than himself, a lineage of warriors, protectors, and symbols of virtue. The act of knighting is as much spiritual as it is social. The new knight is reminded of his duties, not only to his lord and peers, but also to God and to the people he will protect. The ceremony often includes prayers for courage, guidance, and moral strength. The knight is called to uphold justice, to protect the weak, to act with integrity, and to face danger with steadfastness. These words, spoken slowly and deliberately, settle in the mind like gentle rain, planting seeds of ideals that will grow with experience and time. Following the central ritual, the new knight may be presented to the court, to family, or to peers. Applause, nods, and quiet acknowledgments mark the recognition of achievement, and the knight is reminded that he is now both a public figure and a private servant. His actions will reflect on his master, his lineage, and the values of knighthood itself. The recognition is not merely social, it is a call to live up to the responsibilities now placed upon him. After the ceremony, the knight often participates in his first formal duties in his new role. These may be symbolic gestures, such as overseeing a training session, assisting in a local defense, or participating in a religious procession. Each action, though modest, reinforces the lessons of the ceremony, that knighthood is a life, not a single moment, that courage and honor are habits cultivated through daily practice, and that service, responsibility, and integrity are inseparable from the status he now holds. The psychological and emotional impact of the ceremony is profound. The new knight carries with him a sense of achievement, pride, and solemnity, but also an acute awareness of responsibility. He knows that he has entered a world where every choice, every action, and every word carries weight. He understands that courage is tested not only on the battlefield, but in the quiet moments of duty, in decisions that affect others, and in the steady adherence to principles that may be challenging to uphold. As you imagine this, picture the quiet glow of candlelight on stone walls, the soft murmurs of attendants and clergy, the rhythmic echo of the knight's footsteps as he rises and moves with deliberate grace. Hear the distant notes of a harp, the gentle clanging of armor, and the hushed whispers of those gathered in respect. Feel the calm weight of responsibility settling on shoulders that are now broad with the promise of service, courage, and honor. Allow yourself to drift with this vision, following the steady pace of ritual, reflection, and quiet anticipation. Imagine the tactile sensation of polished steel, the smooth touch of fabric, the warm glow of candlelight, and the soft, ceremonial tones of words that will guide the new knight for a lifetime. In this slow, deliberate unfolding, there is both beauty and gravity, a sense of continuity across generations, and a gentle reminder that true knighthood is a life cultivated patiently, thoughtfully, and with care. And as you let your mind rest on this story, allow the rhythm of the ceremony, the quiet patience of preparation, and the serene solemnity of transformation to guide you deeper into calm. Picture the new knight standing tall, breathing slowly, and stepping softly into a world where courage, honor, and service shape every day. Let this gentle unfolding lull you, carrying you further into dreams, into a peaceful state, and into the slow, steady rhythm of a world shaped by discipline, tradition, and the quiet promise of knighthood. Imagine, dear friend, the soft clinking of metal, the scent of oiled leather, and the gentle echo of a hammer against iron in a dimly lit forge. This is the world of the knight's armor, a world that is as much about art, ingenuity, and protection as it is about the silent poetry of movement and weight. Armor was never merely functional. It was a living extension of the knight himself, evolving slowly over centuries to meet the demands of battle, mobility, and the display of prestige. Understanding armor and its evolution allows us to feel, almost tangibly, the weight, the comfort, and the majesty of the knight's existence in medieval history. In the earliest days, armor was simple. Knights of the early medieval period often wore padded garments or tunics reinforced with leather or small metal plates. These early forms of protection offered a balance between mobility and defense, enough to guard against arrows, swords, and lances, while still allowing the knight to ride, maneuver, and endure long campaigns. The weight was manageable, but even a small suit of early armor carried a presence, a physical reminder that the knight was prepared for both the dangers and the discipline of war. As time passed, armor became more sophisticated. Chainmail, a delicate weave of interlocking iron rings, became the standard. It was flexible, yet surprisingly strong, protecting vital areas while allowing a range of movement impossible with rigid plates. Imagine the sensation of wearing such mail. The cool, weighty texture resting against the body, the soft rhythm of rings brushing against one another as the knight walked or rode, and the reassurance that each link could deflect a deadly strike. Chainmail was painstaking to create, often made by skilled craftsmen. Over weeks or months, each ring carefully formed, linked, and riveted. It was both a shield and a symbol of the dedication and resources required to be a true knight. Over the centuries, armor continued to evolve in response to advances in weaponry and tactics. Helmets, once simple leather caps, became intricately designed steel pieces, often with visors that could be lifted or lowered. Gauntlets protected hands, greaves shielded the legs, and breastplates safeguarded the torso. The full suit of plate armor, emerging in the later medieval period, transformed the knight into a figure of near mythical presence, a walking fortress combining mobility, protection, and artistry. The weight, though substantial, sometimes exceeding 50 or 60 pounds, was distributed cleverly across the body, allowing trained knights to move, fight, and ride with surprising agility. Armor was also a canvas for individuality and status. Engravings, gilded edges, and decorative crests told stories, marked allegiance, and announced prestige. A knight's armor was not only protection, it was an outward sign of skill, wealth, and honor. Imagine walking through a hall of knights, each suit of armor catching the flicker of torchlight, reflecting color and pattern, a quiet parade of dedication and artistry. Every curve, hinge, and clasp was carefully designed for both function and aesthetic, blending practicality with a subtle theatricality that enhanced the knight's presence both in battle and at court. Wearing armor required skill, endurance, and patience. The process of donning a full suit was a ritual in itself. Servants or squires assisted in fastening straps, lacing rings, and ensuring that each plate or piece of mail was positioned correctly. Once in place, the armor became a second skin, a combination of restriction and empowerment. The knight could feel the weight on his shoulders and joints, the snug embrace around his chest and limbs, and the gentle press of the helmet against his head. Movement required confidence and practice, for every step, swing, or gallop demanded awareness of the metal encasing the body. Training in armor was crucial. Knights practiced for hours, learning how to fight effectively without being hindered, how to mount and dismount horses, and how to adjust posture and balance to accommodate the suit. Imagine the gentle rhythm of a knight moving in the courtyard, swinging a sword or lance, the soft clanging of metal against metal, and the quiet discipline required to transform weight into strength. Each movement was both physical and mental, a combination of endurance, awareness, and the cultivation of a presence that was both protective and imposing. Armor evolved not only for combat, but for tournaments, ceremonies, and displays of prestige. Tournament armor, often heavier and more elaborate than battlefield armor, allowed knights to demonstrate skill and courage in controlled environments. These events were both tests of technique and spectacles for spectators, where armor became part of the pageantry, reflecting the artistry, wealth, and status of the wearer. The subtle differences between tournament and combat armor remind us that knighthood was both practical and symbolic, a life defined by duty and decorated by tradition. The evolution of armor was also shaped by the ever-changing threats of the battlefield. As weapons improved, bows became more powerful, crossbows more precise, and polearms more lethal. Armor adapted. Plating grew thicker in critical areas. Helmets developed visors and reinforcements, and chainmail was sometimes layered beneath steel plates to provide both flexibility and protection. Every advancement represented a dialogue between offense and defense, a silent negotiation between the tools of violence and the methods of survival. In quiet reflection, imagine a knight standing in a sunlit courtyard, his armor gleaming softly in the morning light. Feel the gentle weight on his shoulders, the subtle press of gauntlets on his hands, the reassuring embrace of chest and greaves. Hear the faint brushing of chainmail, the whisper of straps being fastened, the distant echoes of training and preparation. Armor is not merely protection, it is a companion, a teacher, a silent partner in every step, gallop, and clash of steel. Armor also tells stories of time and place. Each suit reflects the era in which it was forged, the craftsmanship of its maker, and the wealth or status of its wearer. In studying the evolution of armor, we trace not only technological advancements, but also social structures, ideals of beauty and prestige, and the intricate interplay between practicality and expression. Each plate, link, or helmet visor becomes a window into the life, challenges, and aspirations of the knights who wore them. Allow your mind to drift through this world of metal, leather, and craftsmanship. Picture a line of knights preparing for battle or parade, each step deliberate, each gesture amplified by the presence of their armor. Feel the rhythm of movement, the steady press of protection, and the gentle discipline required to harmonize body, mind, and metal. Let this slow, immersive reflection guide you into calm, where the weight of history, artistry, and courage settles gently, like the soft echo of footsteps in a stone corridor, carrying you deeper into rest and dream. In the quiet, torch-lit halls of a medieval castle, or in the soft morning mist of a training yard. The knight's weapons rest as silent companions. They are both tools and extensions of the knight's body, each forged with care, balance, and purpose. Understanding these weapons allows us to enter the intimate world of the knight, to feel the weight of steel in hand, the rhythm of practice, and the profound connection between warrior and instrument of defense and honor. The sword is perhaps the most iconic of all knightly weapons. Its long, gleaming blade, perfectly balanced in the hand, represents both skill and status. Knights trained for years to wield it with precision, grace, and power. Imagine the subtle weight of a sword, the way it feels as an extension of the arm, responding to every movement, every shift of balance, and every intention of the mind. Training with a sword was not merely about strength, it was about timing, awareness, and the quiet understanding of how to parry, strike, and defend. The sword was often personalized, engraved with symbols, family crests, or inscriptions, turning each weapon into a reflection of its owner's identity and honor. Alongside the sword, the lance played a central role, especially in mounted combat and tournaments. A lance was long and formidable, designed for charging on horseback, for breaking the ranks of opponents, and for demonstrating the skill and courage of the knight. Handling a lance required practice, balance, and an intimate connection with the horse. The weight, the reach, and the momentum of the charge all demanded coordination and timing, and a well-trained knight could feel the subtle shifts of horse and weapon as a single, harmonious movement. Knights also carried secondary weapons, daggers, maces, axes, and warhammers. Each had its own purpose. A dagger, for instance, could be used in close combat when space was limited, or as a last line of defense if the primary weapon was lost. Maces and warhammers were designed to overcome armor, their blunt force able to crush or dent plates that might deflect a sword. Axes could deliver heavy blows and were often used both on foot and horseback. The knight trained to use these tools with skill and precision, understanding their strengths, limitations, and the most effective ways to employ them in combat. Bows and crossbows, while not typically wielded by mounted knights themselves, were essential in coordinated battles. A knight might command archers, understand the trajectories and ranges of these weapons, and learn to coordinate attacks. Knowledge of ranged weaponry added a layer of strategy to the knight's skill set, expanding his understanding of the battlefield beyond direct melee combat. Training with weapons was both repetitive and meditative. A squire, practicing under the supervision of his knight, would learn the rhythm of swings, thrusts, and parries. Wooden practice swords and blunt weapons were used first, allowing for the development of coordination, timing, and control. Gradually, steel weapons were introduced, and the squire learned to move with their weight, to anticipate resistance, and to respond instinctively to the flow of combat. This repetition was slow and steady, designed to build muscle memory, endurance, and confidence. Weapons were also symbols, carrying social and moral significance. A knight's sword might be consecrated, blessed, or inscribed with religious or familial symbols. It was not merely a tool of war, but a representation of honor, courage, and responsibility. To wield a weapon carelessly or unjustly was to risk not only physical harm, but also moral and social disgrace. The knight's skill with his weapons was inseparable from his reputation, and mastery was a lifelong pursuit. Maintenance of weapons was another crucial part of a knight's life. Blades were sharpened regularly, polished, and oiled to prevent rust. Wooden handles were inspected for cracks, and leather grips were conditioned for comfort and durability. Each weapon required daily attention, for neglect could lead to disaster in battle. This care taught patience, attention to detail, and the deep connection between the knight and the tools that would protect him and those he swore to defend. In the quiet moments of training, imagine the gentle rhythm of steel cutting through air, the soft clash of wooden swords in sparring, and the careful adjustments of leather straps and grips. Hear the muted footsteps of knights and squires on the practice field, the distant neighing of horses, and the occasional metallic echo as armor brushes against weapons. Feel the subtle hum of concentration, the slow, steady pulse of preparation that underlies every skilled strike. Weapons also carry the poetry of history. Each blade, each lance, each hammer reflects centuries of craftsmanship, experimentation, and adaptation. Studying them reveals not only techniques of war, but also the social structures, artistry, and values of the time. They are tangible links to a world where skill, courage, and moral conduct were inseparable from the tools a knight wielded. Allow your mind to wander through the quiet training yard. Picture a knight swinging his sword in a measured, fluid motion, the weight perfectly balanced, his focus absolute. Watch as a squire practices with a wooden lance, stepping carefully, adjusting his posture, learning the rhythm of horse and weapon. Hear the soft metallic whispers of armor and steel, the gentle clatter of hooves, and the distant murmurs of observation and guidance. Weapons of the knight were not only instruments of war, but partners in a lifelong journey of skill, discipline, and honor. They required patience, care, and respect. They demanded mastery, reflection, and constant awareness. And as you imagine this world, let the rhythm of training, the slow focus on precision, and the gentle weight of steel guide your own mind into calm, carrying you deeper into rest, into reflection, and into the quiet rhythm of medieval life. Imagine, dear friend, a vast field stretching under a pale morning sky, the air carrying the distant clatter of armor, the muted neighing of horses, and the soft, rhythmic footsteps of soldiers preparing for the day. This is the world of the knight on campaign, a world that is both harsh and beautiful, demanding yet filled with quiet moments that few outsiders ever witness. Life on the battlefield was not just about combat, it was a delicate balance of routine, preparation, strategy, and rest, shaped by the rhythm of war and the needs of those who moved through it. Before the clash of swords or the charge of cavalry, the knight's day began early. Dawn was a signal not only for action, but for observation, reflection, and readiness. Knights inspected their horses and armor, ensuring that every strap was secure, every plate polished, every blade sharp. Squires assisted in this work, learning the intimate details of preparation, understanding that a single lapse in care could mean danger on the battlefield. The scent of oiled leather, the metallic tang of polished steel, and the warmth of the horse's breath created an atmosphere both tense and comforting, a rhythm that became familiar with time and experience. Meals were simple, practical, and consumed quickly. often eaten while mounted or near the encampment. Knights and soldiers relied on bread, cheese, dried meats, and water or weak ale. There was little time for leisure, yet even in these moments, there was a quiet ritual, the sharing of food among companions, the exchange of words that fostered camaraderie, and the brief solace of warmth before the demands of the day took hold. Meals reinforced bonds, reminding the knight that even amidst danger, human connection and support were vital. Training and drills were ongoing. Even in the midst of a campaign, knights practiced swordplay, mounted maneuvers, and coordination with infantry. The battlefield was a dynamic classroom where observation and adjustment were constant. Knights learned to anticipate enemy movements, to maintain composure under pressure, and to move as a unit. The cadence of hooves, the rhythm of coordinated charges, and the disciplined placement of soldiers created a silent poetry, a careful balance between chaos and control. Between engagements, much of a knight's life was waiting, waiting for orders, waiting for scouts to return, waiting for the enemy to make a move. These moments of stillness were filled with quiet preparation. Knights polished armor, sharpened blades, tended to horses, and mapped strategies in consultation with commanders. In these periods, there was time for reflection, prayer, and planning. A knight might write letters, consider the welfare of those under his protection, or meditate on the values that guided his life. This slow, deliberate rhythm of preparation and anticipation was as essential to survival as skill in combat. Campsites and encampments were small, temporary communities. Tents were pitched carefully, supplies arranged meticulously, and guards posted in a rhythm that balanced vigilance and rest. Knights and squires moved between tents, checking on equipment, conversing with allies, and offering guidance to soldiers. The sounds of camp life were muted yet persistent. The distant clanging of armor, the soft steps of sentries, the low murmur of conversation, and the occasional neigh of a restless horse. Even amidst these small noises, there was a sense of calm, order, a structure that allowed knights to operate efficiently and maintain readiness. Sleep on campaign was brief and often interrupted. Knights rested in tents, on cots, or even on the ground, their armor partially removed or padded under clothing for comfort. Sentries walked slowly, keeping watch, while others whispered quietly, conserving energy for the inevitable demands of the next day. Dreams were often interwoven with preparation and reflection, rehearsing movements, visualizing the battlefield, and imagining strategies. Sleep, though short and restless, was essential, replenishing the mind and body for the challenges ahead. Hygiene and health were constant concerns. Knights and soldiers bathed, when possible, cleaned wounds, and tended to illnesses with the limited resources available. Herbs, poultices, and basic medical knowledge were employed to treat injuries, but prevention was paramount. Clean water, careful attention to diet, and the management of fatigue all played roles in sustaining the knight's effectiveness. These small acts of care, performed quietly and with patience, were as important as the strength of sword or lance in maintaining readiness. The psychological life of the battlefield was complex. Knights were trained to face danger, yet moments of fear, doubt, or reflection were inevitable. In these times, Camaraderie, ritual, and meditation became tools of resilience. Knights drew strength from their companions, from the routines of preparation, and from the ideals of courage, honor, and loyalty that had guided them from pagehood through squiredom. Each day reinforced the interconnection of skill, duty, and moral fortitude. Communication and strategy were ongoing tasks. Scouts reported enemy positions, signals were passed along lines, and knights coordinated maneuvers with precision. Every movement was deliberate, rehearsed, and adjusted according to terrain, weather, and the behavior of opponents. The battlefield was a living, breathing entity, and the knight learned to read it with care, patience, and quiet observation. Occasionally, there were moments of ceremony or ritual even on the battlefield, prayers before battle, blessings of swords, or silent reflection by the tent of a fallen comrade reminded the knight that war was not only a physical contest, but a moral and spiritual one as well. These rituals provided calm, centered the mind, and reinforced the values that guided the knight's life. As you imagine this world, picture a knight rising at dawn, the cool air brushing against polished armor, the soft whinny of a horse nearby. Hear the distant movements of soldiers, the gentle clinking of weapons, and the quiet murmur of plans being exchanged. Feel the rhythm of preparation, anticipation, and reflection, the steady pace that shapes every day on campaign. The battlefield is not only a place of conflict, it is a space of discipline, vigilance, and slow, deliberate mastery. Allow yourself to drift with the cadence of this life. Imagine the knight tending his horse, polishing his armor, and practicing his movements in the quiet moments before action. Feel the rhythm of patience, preparation, and quiet courage, and let it guide your own mind into calm, into rest, and into the gentle unfolding of dreams. Life on the battlefield, though intense and demanding, carries its own poetry, its own slow rhythm, and its own serene, patient order. As the soft light of dawn illuminates a quiet castle courtyard or the distant fields of a medieval village, imagine a knight standing in reflective silence. His armor glimmers gently, and his sword rests at his side. Yet his mind is focused on a higher, unseen discipline, the code of chivalry. This was not a set of laws enforced by courts or lords, but a moral and ethical framework that shaped every action, every decision, and every interaction in the life of a knight. Understanding this code is essential to understanding what it truly meant to live as a knight in medieval history. The code of chivalry was a tapestry of ideals, woven from threads of courage, honor, loyalty, courtesy, and faith. It was both aspirational and practical, guiding knights in battle, in service, and in social interactions. Each knight internalized the code differently, depending on his experiences, training, and reflections, but the underlying principles were remarkably consistent across time and place. They were reminders that the strength of a knight was measured not only by skill or physical prowess, but also by moral integrity, wisdom, and empathy. Education and mentorship were additional responsibilities. Experienced knights trained squires and young warriors, passing down knowledge of combat, tactics, and moral conduct. The training of the next generation ensured continuity of skill, honor, and service. A knight might spend hours observing a squire, correcting posture, explaining strategy, or sharing stories that illustrated the subtleties of courage and judgment. These moments of teaching reinforced both community and tradition, binding past and future in a quiet, deliberate rhythm. The knight's relationship with the church was another vital aspect. Many knights were devout, participating in religious ceremonies, pilgrimages, and holy wars, while also seeking counsel and blessing from clergy. Faith provided moral guidance, reinforced the code of chivalry, and offered comfort during moments of doubt or danger. Priests, abbots, and chaplains often advised knights, reminding them that courage and strength were most meaningful when tempered by piety and reflection. In quieter moments, knights engaged with the daily rhythms of the village life. They might walk through fields, inspect fortifications, converse with peasants, or oversee market activities. These interactions, though subtle, were essential in building trust and maintaining order. The knight's presence reminded all who lived under feudal protection that courage and authority were intertwined with fairness, service, and moral integrity. Knights also served as symbols of aspiration and inspiration to villagers and aspiring young warriors. The knight embodied ideals of courage, loyalty, and honor. Tales of their deeds circulated in songs, stories, and celebrations, teaching lessons of morality, bravery, and perseverance. Even for those who would never wield a sword, the knight represented the possibility of achieving greatness through discipline, duty, and dedication. Economically, knights contributed to stability and production. Their stewardship of lands, oversight of harvests, and coordination of resources ensured that the estates they served remained functional and productive. A knight's decisions impacted not only security, but also prosperity, linking martial skill with practical management in ways that sustained communities over time. In the quiet of evening, after patrols, administration, or battles, a knight might sit beside the hearth or under the stars, reflecting on the day's events. The soft crackle of fire, the cool touch of night air, and the gentle rhythm of distant sounds created a space for contemplation. He considered the welfare of those under his protection, the integrity of his actions, and the continuous striving to live according to the ideals of chivalry. Imagine, then, a knight moving through the feudal landscape, a figure of quiet strength, measured skill, and moral presence. Every step, glance, and action is informed by duty, honor, and service. From castle walls to village lanes, from battlefield to chapel, the knight's role was comprehensive, blending warrior, administrator, protector, and moral guide. Each day reinforced the slow, deliberate rhythms of feudal society, a dance of responsibility, courage, and quiet vigilance. Allow your mind to drift with this vision. Feel the slow, steady rhythm of a knight's life in service to Lord and people, the gentle balance of duty, vigilance, and reflection. Hear the faint sounds of village life, the distant clatter of training, and the soft rustle of armor as he moves with calm purpose. The knight's role in feudal society was not just to fight, it was to sustain, to protect, and to guide. Let this awareness carry you into a state of calm, deep reflection, and gentle rest, where the rhythm of medieval life lulls your mind into the serenity of dreams. Imagine, dear friend, a quiet, medieval landscape bathed in soft sunlight, the hum of village life drifting gently across the fields, and the gentle clatter of hooves on cobblestones as knights move through the calm days between battles. While much of a knight's life is imagined in the heat and chaos of war, there were long stretches of peacetime, periods in which the rhythm of daily life, duties, and training carried its own form of quiet intensity and gentle beauty. The life of a knight in peacetime was one of preparation, reflection, service, and the cultivation of personal and social skills, all of which were essential to the fulfillment of his role. Mornings began with routine, though less hurried than during campaigns. Nights often rose with the sun, the soft light illuminating polished armor, weapons, and horse tack as they prepared for the day. Care for the body, mind, and equipment remained essential. Horses were groomed and exercised, armor inspected and maintained, and weapons cleaned and sharpened. Even in the absence of immediate danger, these routines instilled discipline, a sense of responsibility, and a rhythm that carried both practical and symbolic significance. Training remained a central component of peacetime life. Knights practiced swordsmanship, lance techniques, mounted maneuvers, and other martial skills daily, often alongside squires and fellow knights. These exercises were not merely preparation for war, they were also a form of meditation, a way to align mind, body, and spirit. Wooden practice weapons tapped gently against shields. The rhythmic gallop of horses echoed across the training yard, and the quiet murmur of instruction guided every movement. In these sessions, skill was honed with patience, endurance, and reflection, creating a subtle harmony between exertion and calm. Beyond physical training, knights devoted time to education, study, and refinement of manners. Reading, writing, and knowledge of history, heraldry, and law were essential, particularly for knights who would participate in courtly life or administrative duties. The life of a knight was as intellectual as it was physical, and mastery of social etiquette, strategy, and moral reasoning was crucial. Imagine a knight sitting in a quiet chamber, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating parchment as he studies maps, composes letters, or reviews chronicles of past battles and legendary deeds. These quiet hours nurtured wisdom, foresight, and understanding. Knights also played significant roles in local administration and governance. They oversaw lands, mediated disputes, and ensured that peasants, townsfolk, and tenants were treated fairly. Even in peacetime, their presence maintained order and reinforced social cohesion. Picture a knight walking slowly through a village, speaking gently with farmers, listening to concerns, and resolving disputes with calm authority. These moments, though peaceful, demanded patience, moral judgment, and careful observation, qualities as vital as courage in battle. Ceremonial duties and courtly life were also woven into peacetime. Knights attended feasts, tournaments, and gatherings, demonstrating courtesy, diplomacy, and respect. Pageantry, gestures, and etiquette were not superficial. They reflected the ideals of chivalry, the stability of social hierarchies, and the refinement of personal character. Imagine the gentle clink of goblets, the quiet murmur of conversations, and the subtle movements of knights and lords exchanging respect, advice, and observation in the glow of candlelight. These interactions trained the knight in diplomacy, patience, and grace. Peacetime also offered moments for personal reflection and spiritual practice. Knights prayed, meditated, or attended religious services, seeking guidance and inner strength. Faith provided moral grounding, reminding the knight that his duties were not only to his lord or society, but also to higher principles of justice, honor, and service. Picture a knight kneeling quietly in a chapel, the faint scent of incense drifting through stone arches, light filtering softly through stained glass, and a profound sense of calm settling upon him. These spiritual rhythms complemented the physical, intellectual, and social disciplines of knighthood. Community engagement was another important aspect of life in peacetime. Knights often oversaw training for squires, advised lords on strategic matters, or participated in charitable acts such as supporting the sick, aiding travelers, or maintaining infrastructure. Their actions reinforced the social bonds of the community and exemplified the ideals of chivalry in daily life. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a knight assisting in the construction of a bridge, guiding a squire through a practice session, or quietly mentoring a young villager in moral conduct. These small, steady actions carried profound significance. Even leisure, though rare and structured, was purposeful. Hunting, falconry, and riding were common pastimes, providing both exercise and opportunities to practice skill, patience, and observation. Tournaments and games offered a controlled environment for competition, testing skill, strategy, and composure. Every activity, from the playful to the serious, contributed to the development of the knight's character, body, and mind, reinforcing habits of discipline, focus, and awareness. In peacetime, knights also maintained their relationships with other members of the nobility and their peers. Alliances, mentorships, and social networks were cultivated with care, as these bonds provided support, information, and stability. Picture knights sharing quiet conversation over evening fires, exchanging advice on tactics, land management, or matters of honor. These interactions reinforced the interconnected nature of feudal society, reminding knights that their responsibilities extended beyond individual skill to the welfare of communities and the cohesion of their social world. The pace of life in peacetime, though less urgent than on the battlefield, carried its own rhythm. Each day offered cycles of training, reflection, service, and observation. Even routine tasks, grooming horses, polishing armor, or overseeing lands, took on a meditative quality, encouraging mindfulness and steady attention to detail. Knights learned that calm, consistent preparation was as important as decisive action in moments of crisis. In quiet moments, imagine a knight walking along a shaded forest path, the soft rustle of leaves above him, the distant sound of water over stones, and the gentle rhythm of hooves on soft earth. He reflects on past battles, lessons learned, and the ideals he strives to embody. The peaceful surroundings allow him to connect deeply with the rhythms of life, duty, and self-improvement, creating a gentle balance between action and contemplation. Allow your mind to drift with this vision. Feel the calm cadence of training, reflection, and service, the gentle weight of armor and responsibility, and the steady rhythm of preparation and care. Life in peacetime though quieter, was filled with purpose, discipline, and gentle beauty. Let this awareness guide you into calm, deep reflection and serene rest, where the rhythm of a night's measured life carries you into the soft unfolding of dreams. Picture, dear friend, a medieval field bathed in soft sunlight, the gentle murmur of an assembled crowd, and the quiet anticipation that hangs in the air like the subtle perfume of grass and distant smoke. This is the world of tournaments and jousting, a realm where knights demonstrated skill, courage, and composure, not on the battlefield, but in a controlled, ceremonial display of martial excellence. Tournaments were not merely entertainment, they were a vital aspect of knightly life, blending practice, prestige, and ritual in a rhythm that trained the body, disciplined the mind, and delighted the senses. The day of a tournament began early, with knights preparing their armor, weapons, and horses. Squires adjusted straps, polished steel, and carefully inspected the lances. The soft sound of clinking metal echoed across the training grounds as knights donned their full suits of armor, each plate shining with meticulous care. Horses were groomed to a sheen, their bridles and saddles prepared for both comfort and precision. The careful, deliberate routines of preparation created a sense of calm, focus, and anticipation as knights readied themselves for the skillful displays ahead. Tournaments were structured around two main types of events: melees and jousts. The melee was a group combat, often involving dozens of knights, designed to simulate battlefield conditions. It tested tactics, teamwork, and endurance, requiring knights to coordinate, observe, and respond to rapidly changing circumstances. Picture the gentle rhythm of knights, circling, advancing, and retreating in choreographed patterns, the soft thud of hooves on grass, and the muted clang of swords meeting shields. The melee was intense, yet in its controlled environment, it allowed knights to refine techniques, assess skill, and gain experience without the life or death stakes of war. The joust, however, was the most celebrated event. Two knights charged toward one another on horseback, lances poised, armor gleaming, and eyes focused. The goal was to unseat the opponent, a task that required perfect timing, balance, and control. As the knights approached, the world seemed to slow. The gentle pounding of hooves, the subtle sway of the lance, the whispered encouragement of spectators. Impact came with a sharp yet controlled resonance, a clash that echoed across the field, followed by the graceful recovery of each knight. Whether victorious or unseated, each pass tested skill, courage, and composure, teaching lessons in precision, anticipation, and resilience. Tournaments were not only tests of skill, they were social and ceremonial occasions. Lords, ladies, and visitors gathered to watch, their presence creating an atmosphere of prestige and importance. Knights displayed banners, heraldic symbols, and colors that marked lineage, loyalty, and personal identity. Imagine the soft flutter of pennants in the breeze, the muted applause of spectators, and the gentle commentary of heralds describing the actions and accomplishments of participants. The visual and auditory rhythms of the tournament created a sense of grandeur, continuity, and quiet celebration. Preparation for tournaments was meticulous. Armor was often modified or specially crafted for safety and mobility. Lances were selected for balance and weight, and horses were trained for agility and responsiveness. Knights practiced relentlessly, rehearsing charges, controlling speed, and maintaining stability under impact. The repetitive, meditative nature of this preparation mirrored broader aspects of knightly discipline, focus, patience, and mastery of both mind and body. Tournaments also offered opportunities for honor, prestige, and recognition. Success in a joust could enhance a knight's reputation, attract patronage, or strengthen alliances. Yet, even without victory, participation demonstrated courage, skill, and dedication to the ideals of chivalry. The quiet dignity of riding into the lists, the measured control of body and horse, and the composed execution of each pass reflected the knight's internalization of discipline and ethical conduct. Beyond individual skill, tournaments fostered camaraderie and mentorship. Younger knights and squires observed, learned, and sometimes participated under the guidance of more experienced warriors. Advice was exchanged quietly, techniques demonstrated carefully, and encouragement offered with subtle patience. These interactions reinforced the transmission of knowledge, the cultivation of skill, and the continuation of knightly traditions across generations. The ceremonial aspects of tournaments were intertwined with religious and moral symbolism. Prayers were often offered for protection and guidance, blessings received from clergy, and rituals observed before and after combat. These spiritual elements reminded knights that their martial prowess was inseparable from moral responsibility, courage guided by virtue, and skill tempered by ethical reflection. Imagine a knight kneeling briefly before entering the lists, the soft murmur of prayer blending with the gentle rustle of banners and the distant murmur of the crowd. Even the quiet pauses between events carried meaning. Knights walked calmly through the grounds, adjusting armor, checking equipment, and reflecting on performance. Spectators, observing with a hushed attentiveness, reinforced the social and cultural significance of the occasion. The rhythm of action and reflection, display, and contemplation created a subtle meditation on skill, honor, and presence. Tournaments were also a study in observation and anticipation. Knights learned to read opponents, to notice subtle shifts in stance, timing, and balance. The repetition of charges and the gradual refinement of techniques mirrored the lifelong practice of discipline and self-improvement. Each pass in the lists was a dialogue of skill, a conversation of movement, precision, and silent understanding between horse, weapon, and rider. In the gentle aftermath of a tournament, knights tended to horses, polished armor, and reflected on lessons learned. Victories and defeats were approached with measured composure, maintaining honor, humility, and the quiet pursuit of improvement. Picture the soft light of evening falling across the field, the gentle brushing of horses' coats, and the quiet conversations of knights sharing observations and insights. The tournament, though public and ceremonial, was also a deeply personal exercise in growth, skill, and reflection. Allow your mind to drift with this vision. Feel the rhythm of hooves on grass, the subtle pressure of lance in hand, the gentle sway of armor as knights move with precision. Hear the muted applause of the crowd, the soft encouragement of mentors, and the quiet reflection after each charge. Tournaments and jousting in their ceremonial elegance and disciplined choreography, were not only tests of skill, they were a meditation, a dance of courage, focus, and honor. Let this vision guide you into calm, reflection, and gentle rest, carrying you softly into the peaceful rhythm of dreams. Picture, dear friend, a quiet, medieval chapel bathed in soft morning light, the faint scent of incense drifting through the stone arches, and the gentle murmur of prayers rising and falling like a calm tide. For a night, religion was not merely a background element of life, it was a guiding force, a moral compass, and a source of courage and reflection. The intertwining of faith and knighthood shaped not only daily routines, but also the deeper rhythms of decision making, honor, and the understanding of duty. From the earliest days of training, a knight was introduced to the teachings and rituals of the church. Squires learned to pray, to observe the sacraments, and to reflect upon moral guidance offered by clergy. Faith became a steady companion, influencing both internal thought and external behavior. Picture a young squire kneeling on a stone floor, the coolness of the stone grounding him as he whispers prayers, the flickering torchlight casting gentle shadows across the walls. These moments instilled a sense of purpose, calm, and inner discipline that would carry him through the trials of knighthood. Religion shaped the moral framework of a knight. Courage, honor, mercy, and justice were not only social or ethical ideals, they were spiritual imperatives intertwined with the teachings of the church. The knight's actions, whether on the battlefield, in tournaments, or in everyday interactions, were guided by a sense of divine accountability. Imagine a knight pausing before a campaign, hands clasped in quiet prayer, contemplating the responsibility he bears to his lord, his companions, and the vulnerable, all under the watchful presence of higher principles. Participation in religious ceremonies was woven into daily life. Knights attended Mass, celebrated feast days, and took part in processions. These rituals reinforced community, provided spiritual nourishment, and reminded knights that their physical prowess and martial skill were meaningful only when guided by moral reflection and devotion. Picture the soft chime of bells, the muted rustle of robes, and the rhythmic cadence of hymns filling the chapel, creating a gentle, meditative atmosphere where the knight's mind and heart could find alignment. Knights were often called to defend not only lands and lords, but also the faith itself. Crusades, holy wars, and campaigns sanctioned by religious authority demanded courage, discipline, and moral fortitude. These endeavors were framed as sacred duties, blending martial skill with spiritual purpose. Imagine a knight preparing for such a journey, reflecting on the teachings of clergy, seeking blessings, and contemplating the balance between duty to God, duty to Lord, and duty to self. The weight of armor and sword was matched by the weight of responsibility and moral discernment, creating a rhythm of preparation, meditation, and resolve. Pilgrimages were another way that knights engaged with religion, traveling to holy sites, often under challenging conditions, reinforced humility, patience, and reflection. The journey itself became a metaphor for personal development, each step measured, each challenge faced with courage, and each reflection deepening understanding of both faith and personal duty. Picture a knight walking slowly along a dusty path, the wind whispering through trees, the distant sound of a river flowing, and the sun warm on his armor as he meditates upon virtue, loyalty, and the fleeting nature of worldly concerns. Religious guidance was closely integrated with the code of chivalry. Clergy offered counsel on moral dilemmas, ethical decisions, and the balance between personal ambition and service to others. Knights often consulted chaplains or priests before significant battles, diplomatic encounters, or important decisions, reflecting a life where faith, morality, and martial skill were inseparable. The quiet, patient dialogue between knight and clergy nurtured reflection, humility, and moral courage. Religious symbolism also permeated the knight's armor, weapons, and banners. Crosses, inscriptions, and blessed symbols reminded knights of their spiritual obligations, providing comfort and guidance in moments of doubt or fear. Picture a knight raising his visor, the soft gleam of a cross etched into his breastplate, catching the morning sun, a gentle reassurance that he is guided by principles greater than himself. This subtle integration of faith into daily life created a rhythm of reflection, discipline, and spiritual alignment. Meditation, prayer, and reflection were vital elements of a knight's daily routine. Quiet moments, whether in chapel, camp, or castle, allowed knights to consider their actions, responsibilities, and moral choices. The soft cadence of prayer, the gentle rustle of robes, and the cool touch of stone or grass underfoot reinforced awareness, patience, and inner calm. These practices nurtured resilience, focus, and moral integrity, ensuring that the knight's strength was matched by wisdom and virtue. Religion also offered consolation in the face of loss, injury, or the uncertainties of warfare. Knights found solace in prayer, guidance in scripture, and comfort in ritual. In the quiet of night, after a day of training or duty, a knight might kneel silently, reflecting on the lives he has touched, the responsibilities he carries, and the ideals he strives to embody. The rhythm of faith became a gentle anchor, steadying the mind and calming the heart. In peacetime, knights continued to engage with religious life through patronage, building chapels, supporting monasteries, and assisting communities in spiritual and material needs. Their participation reinforced both the moral and social fabric of society, blending service, reflection, and duty. Imagine a knight overseeing the construction of a small chapel, guiding artisans, and quietly observing the unfolding of devotion expressed through architecture and community. Allow your mind to drift gently with this vision. Feel the soft cadence of prayer, the rhythmic hush of stone corridors, the subtle warmth of sunlight through stained glass, and the quiet weight of faith carried with purpose and reflection. Knighthood and religion were inseparable, creating a slow, meditative rhythm that guided action, reinforced moral integrity, and nurtured inner calm. Let this vision carry you softly into reflection, serenity, and the gentle unfolding of dreams. Imagine, dear friend, the soft rustle of leaves in a quiet castle courtyard, the faint clip-clop of horses across cobblestones, and a young boy standing in eager anticipation. This boy, a squire, is at the threshold of a journey that will shape his life, discipline his mind, and refine his body. The path from squire to knight was long, deliberate, and filled with quiet lessons that often demanded patience endurance, and reflection. It was a journey that trained not only the hands and arms, but also the heart, mind, and soul, preparing the young warrior to embody courage, honor, and service. A squire's day began before dawn, a rhythm of quiet discipline that mirrored the responsibilities he would one day carry. He attended to his lord's armor, polishing each plate until it gleamed, oiling leather straps, and sharpening weapons. The gentle clinking of metal under careful hands became a meditative exercise, teaching precision, patience, and respect for tools that would one day protect his own life and those of others. Each careful movement reinforced the connection between responsibility, care, and the practical realities of knighthood. Physical training was central to a squire's life. Squires practiced swordplay with wooden blades, honed archery skills, learned the nuances of mounted combat, and exercised tirelessly to develop strength and stamina. Imagine the gentle rhythm of a young squire swinging a practice sword, stepping carefully, feeling the weight of the blade, and learning how to coordinate movements of body, mind, and weapon. Every swing, every stance, and every measured strike was a lesson in discipline, focus, and the subtle artistry of martial skill. Beyond physical skills, a squire learned the social and moral duties of knighthood. Courtesy, respect for elders, and proper conduct in the presence of lords and ladies were emphasized daily. Squires observed tournaments, feasts, and courtly ceremonies, learning to navigate the nuances of etiquette and diplomacy. Imagine a young squire quietly watching the measured steps of a knight in a grand hall, absorbing the rhythm of gestures, the subtle exchange of respect, and the unspoken codes that governed behavior. These lessons nurtured patience, awareness, and an understanding that true strength is inseparable from moral refinement. Service was a key element of the squire's training. Squires assisted knights in every task, tending to horses, carrying equipment, cleaning armor, and attending to minor duties in battle and daily life. These tasks, though humble, taught the squire humility, attention to detail, and the quiet satisfaction of supporting others. Each moment reinforced the understanding that knighthood was not only about personal glory, but about service, reliability, and contributing to a larger whole. Squires also received instruction in strategy, tactics, and leadership. They learned to observe battles and training exercises with careful attention, analyzing movements, positioning, and coordination. Imagine a young squire standing at the edge of a training field, eyes following the interplay of knights and soldiers, the subtle shifts of posture and timing, and mentally rehearsing responses to various scenarios. These lessons prepared the mind for decision making, awareness, and calm judgment under pressure, qualities as essential as strength and skill. Education in reading, writing, and religious instruction complemented the physical and social training. Squires were taught to read chronicles of battles, letters from lords, and texts on ethics and chivalry. They learned prayers, scripture, and the moral foundations that would guide their actions. Picture a young squire kneeling with a small book of prayers, the soft candlelight flickering across the page, and the quiet rhythm of learning reinforcing both discipline and reflection. Knowledge, combined with physical skill, created a well-rounded foundation for the responsibilities of knighthood. mentorship was vital, as Squire learned from the direct guidance of his knightly mentor, observing carefully, receiving advice, and slowly internalizing the lessons of conduct, skill, and morality. Imagine the gentle voice of a knight correcting posture, explaining a technique, or offering a story of past battles. Each word, each demonstration, and each quiet correction reinforced the squire's understanding, gradually shaping the young mind and body into that of a future knight. The squire's journey also involved moral and spiritual reflection. The ideals of courage, honor, loyalty, and mercy were not theoretical. They were tested in daily practice. Squires were encouraged to contemplate their duties, the consequences of their actions, and the ethical frameworks that would guide their lives. Quiet moments of prayer, meditation, and reflection were interwoven with training, creating a rhythm that nurtured inner calm and moral integrity. Progression to knighthood was gradual. A squire might serve for many years, gaining experience in training, tournaments, and even limited skirmishes, proving reliability, courage, and skill. Every day reinforced lessons learned. Every task strengthened discipline, and every observation deepened understanding. The eventual dubbing ceremony, when a squire was knighted, was a culmination of years of patient effort, reflection, and preparation, a solemn recognition of readiness, character, and responsibility. Picture that moment, the young squire kneeling, the soft clink of ceremonial armor, the gentle touch of a sword on his shoulder, and the quiet murmur of blessings from clergy and witnesses. He rises as a knight, not only with new status, but with the inner knowledge, discipline, and readiness cultivated over years of quiet, careful preparation. The journey from squire to knight is both long and gentle, a steady rhythm of learning, service, and reflection that shapes both body and soul. Allow your mind to drift with this vision. Feel the rhythm of training, the gentle touch of guidance, the quiet satisfaction of service, and the meditative progression of learning. The squire's journey is a slow, deliberate unfolding, a preparation for life that blends courage, skill, honor, and reflection. Let this imagery guide you into calm, introspection, and gentle rest, carrying you softly into the unfolding rhythm of dreams. Imagine a quiet castle hall, candles flickering and banners swaying softly in the still air. Ceremonies of knighthood were deeply symbolic, marking the transition from squire to knight. The ritual began with preparation, purification through bathing, prayer, and reflection on duty, courage, and honor. The squire knelt, often before a lord or monarch, as a sword was gently tapped on each shoulder, a quiet, deliberate gesture that transformed him into a knight. These touches were more than symbolic. They represented the responsibility, courage, and service now entrusted to him. Blessings by clergy added spiritual weight, connecting the knight's duty to moral and religious ideals. Knights then donned armor and sword, embodying both strength and virtue, ready to serve their lord, protect the weak, and uphold justice. Even the smallest details mattered: the ceremonial attire, the slow cadence of steps, and the whispered prayers. These rituals were reminders that knighthood was not only a social rank, but a lifelong commitment to discipline, honor, and service. Imagine the quiet echo of footsteps, the soft clinking of armor, and the serene focus of the new knight. The ceremony's rhythm lingers, a gentle meditation on duty, courage, and calm readiness, easing the mind toward reflection and rest. Picture a knight standing quietly in a castle courtyard, the soft morning light glinting off polished metal. Armor was more than protection. It was a second skin, a symbol of status, and a reflection of skill, discipline, and identity. Each piece of armor had purpose: the helmet for vision and protection, gauntlets for dexterity, breastplate for the heart, and greaves for steady movement. Knights spent hours polishing, adjusting, and caring for their armor, a ritual of patience and mindfulness. Armor also told a story. Engravings, family crests, and symbols reflected heritage, honor, and allegiance. The way a knight moved in armor demonstrated training, control, and harmony between body and gear. Even in quiet moments, donning armor became a meditation, a reminder of duty, resilience, and the calm readiness to face challenges. The subtle clink of metal and the soft weight on the shoulders carried both practical function and symbolic meaning, blending protection, discipline, and the serene confidence of a knight. Imagine, dear friend, a quiet training yard, just as the first light of dawn touches the stone walls and soft grass, the gentle sound of hooves, the faint clatter of wooden practice swords, and the low murmur of knights and squires form a rhythm that feels both alive and soothing. A knight's mastery of weapons and combat skills was central to his life, yet it was far more than mere physical prowess. It was a practice in patience, discipline, and harmony between mind, body, and spirit. Knights trained with a variety of weapons, each demanding its own rhythm, balance, and technique. The sword, long and gleaming, was perhaps the most iconic. Knights learned to wield it with precision, swinging and thrusting in carefully measured movements. Imagine the gentle sweep of a blade through the morning air, the soft clash of wooden practice swords, and the slow rhythm of repeated swings. Each motion was deliberate, reinforcing coordination, timing, and control. Over years, these movements became instinctive, a quiet meditation in motion, teaching the knight how to combine strength with grace and focus. The lance, used in jousting and cavalry charges, required a different set of skills. Mounted on a powerful horse, a knight had to coordinate the movement of both his body and the animal beneath him. Timing was crucial, the balance delicate, and the control absolute. Picture a knight galloping along a training field, the soft thud of hooves echoing in measured rhythm, his lance steady in hand, eyes focused on the target ahead. Each pass reinforced patience, observation, and the ability to act decisively under controlled intensity. Beyond swords and lances, knights trained with maces, axes, and polearms. Each weapon demanded careful study of weight, leverage, and positioning. Imagine the slow arc of a mace in the hands of a skilled knight, the deliberate force applied, the subtle shift of posture to absorb and deliver impact. These exercises taught resilience, coordination, and the understanding that every movement carries consequences, both for oneself and for an opponent. Archery and ranged skills were also part of a knight's training, though often more common in the squire's early years. The quiet draw of a bow, the controlled release of an arrow, and the soft thump as it struck its target became a rhythm of patience and precision. Even in these gentle, repetitive motions, a knight learned focus, calm, and the delicate balance of strength and subtlety. Combat skills extended beyond physical motion. Knights studied tactics, formations, and the flow of battle. They learned to anticipate movements, read opponents, and adjust quickly to shifting circumstances. Picture a knight observing a mock skirmish in the soft morning light, noting the placement of soldiers, the movement of cavalry, and the ebb and flow of engagement. Every observation, every reflection, and every adjustment strengthened judgment, awareness, and strategic thinking. Combat was as much a matter of the mind as of the body, a rhythm of perception, timing, and measured response. Training often involved sparring with fellow knights or instructors. These sessions were not chaotic. They followed a careful structure. Knights engaged in controlled exchanges, practicing strikes, parries, and counters with deliberate attention. The soft clash of weapons, the rhythmic movement of armor, and the subtle shifts in footing created a meditative cadence. Each pass reinforced control, patience, and awareness of both self and opponent. Victory was secondary to the cultivation of skill, judgment, and calm composure. Equally important was the training of the body itself. Knights practiced riding, running, swimming, and strength exercises. Every muscle, joint, and reflex was conditioned to respond smoothly under the weight of armor and the intensity of combat. Imagine the gentle exertion of a knight lifting a wooden training sword, the rhythm of hoofs as he gallops across a field, or the soft resistance of armor moving with his body. The physical discipline became a quiet, steady meditation, reinforcing endurance, resilience, and grace. Knights also learned the subtle art of situational awareness. Every battlefield was a dynamic environment with terrain, weather, and the movements of allies and enemies shaping possibilities. Training emphasized observation, decision-making, and adaptability. Picture a knight standing on a gentle slope, studying the patterns of a simulated battle, noting the placement of obstacles, the rhythm of movements, and the opportunities for advantage. This quiet, thoughtful study cultivated mindfulness and calm judgment, essential skills for both peace and conflict. Weapons maintenance was another part of the daily rhythm. Sharpening blades, oiling metal, and repairing leather components required patience and care. The soft rasp of a whetstone on steel, the gentle motion of polishing, and the careful alignment of fittings became a meditative practice. Knights understood that their skill was inseparable from the care they took of their tools, a reflection of discipline and foresight. Beyond individual skill, knights also practiced teamwork, cavalry charges, infantry coordination, and defensive formations demanded synchronization, communication, and trust. Imagine the soft clatter of hooves, the measured steps of soldiers, and the quiet signals exchanged between knights. Training in formation created a rhythm of collective movement, a shared meditation of discipline, awareness, and unity. In quiet moments, a knight might practice alone, focusing on technique, timing, and breath. The soft scrape of a sword on practice wood, the gentle thud of a shield, and the measured rhythm of stance and step became a form of meditation, aligning body and mind. Combat skills, in this way, were not only about preparation for battle, They were also exercises in patience, self-control, and inner calm. Allow yourself to drift with this vision. Feel the gentle rhythm of practice swings, the soft thud of hooves, and the quiet focus of a knight refining every motion. Weapons and combat skills, while designed for defense and honor, are also a slow, meditative dance of discipline, coordination, and awareness. Let this rhythm guide you into calm, reflection, and the gentle unfolding of dreams. Imagine, dear friend, the first light of dawn spilling over rolling hills, the faint mist lingering in quiet valleys, and a lone knight standing calmly at the edge of a camp. Battle was not only a test of skill and courage, it was a slow, deliberate rhythm of preparation, observation, and measured action. To understand the life of a knight in battle is to step into a world where focus, discipline, and inner calm were as essential as strength, armor, and sword. The day often began long before combat. Knights inspected armor and weapons carefully, adjusting straps, oiling joints, and ensuring that every sword, lance, and shield was in perfect condition. Horses were groomed and saddled, their tack adjusted to provide comfort and precise control. Even these quiet preparations carried a meditative rhythm. Each motion reinforced patience, mindfulness, and the awareness that small details could determine survival. Once mounted and armored, knights observed the terrain and considered strategy. Hills, rivers, forests, and open fields influenced every decision, from positioning to timing. Imagine a knight scanning the horizon, noting shadows of distant banners, the subtle slope of a hill, and the soft rhythm of wind through grass. Awareness and observation were critical. In battle, perception was as powerful as sword or lance. The moment of engagement arrived with a measured intensity. Knights charged, not in reckless haste, but with deliberate coordination, lances poised, horses galloping with rhythmic hoofbeats, and the gentle clank of armor echoing in cadence. Each knight focused on alignment, timing, and the precise delivery of force. Every action was rehearsed through years of training, each movement a quiet meditation executed under pressure. Close combat demanded not only physical skill, but calm composure. Swordplay, parrying, thrusting, and defensive maneuvers required concentration, balance, and awareness. The soft clash of steel, the rhythmic steps of footwork, and the steady breathing of the knight created a subtle, internal rhythm, a dance of precision and controlled intensity. In these moments, fear and adrenaline were tempered by discipline, and every thought was aligned with action. Knights also coordinated with companions, forming shields, lines, and formations. Communication was subtle. Gestures, banners, and signals guided movement. Imagine the quiet synchronization of a unit advancing across a field, the soft murmur of orders, and the measured rhythm of armor moving in unison. Trust, observation, and awareness were critical. Each knight's movement affected the safety and effectiveness of others. While battle was intense, knights were also trained to consider ethics in action, mercy toward the captured, restraint in victory, and protection of non-combatants reflected the enduring influence of the code of chivalry. Even in the chaos of engagement, knights practiced judgment, balancing courage with responsibility and strength with moral restraint. The life of a knight in battle included endurance and adaptation, hours of standing, Marching and riding tested stamina, while continuous observation required focus without fatigue. Knights learned to conserve energy, anticipate opportunities, and respond to unexpected challenges. Imagine the gentle rhythm of breathing, the soft thud of hooves, and the measured swing of weapons, each a reminder of discipline, patience, and the importance of steady presence. In quieter moments, between charges or skirmishes, knights assessed terrain, observed movements, and reflected on strategy. These pauses, though brief, offered opportunity for calm, mental preparation, and thoughtful planning. The life of a knight was never purely reactive. It was a steady, conscious engagement with both external circumstances and internal readiness. Victory or defeat brought further responsibilities. Knights tended the wounded, ensured order was maintained, and participated in the aftermath with composure. The rhythm of service continued, even when the intensity of combat had passed. Discipline, observation, and moral reflection remained central, guiding actions beyond the battlefield. Imagine a night at the end of a day of battle, the soft evening light, the quiet murmur of campfires, the gentle breathing of horses, and the slow, methodical care of armor and weapons. Reflection on decisions, courage displayed, and the welfare of companions created a rhythm of calm and thoughtful presence, blending experience, wisdom, and preparation for whatever lay ahead. Allow yourself to drift with this vision. Feel the quiet cadence of horses, the subtle rhythm of armor and weapons, and the steady pulse of thought and reflection in a knight's mind. The life of a knight in battle is not only about action, it is a meditation in discipline, courage, and awareness, a slow, measured rhythm that carries both body and mind into calm focus and deep reflection. Imagine, dear friend, the soft glow of twilight over a medieval village, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the quiet flicker of candlelight in distant windows. Knights, though often remembered for battles and tournaments, left a legacy far beyond sword and lance. Their influence wove through society, culture, and morality, shaping the rhythm of life for centuries. To understand their legacy is to follow the subtle, enduring echoes of honor, service, and courage across generations. Knights inspired ideals of bravery and morality that transcended the battlefield. Tales of their deeds, both legendary and everyday, were passed from one generation to the next, carried in songs, poems, and stories, whispered beside hearths. Imagine a child listening intently as a bard recounts the careful strategy, moral courage, and honorable choices of a knight. These stories cultivated imagination, aspiration, and an understanding that strength must be guided by wisdom, compassion, and integrity. The code of chivalry was central to their legacy. Courage, loyalty, service, and protection of the weak became guiding principles not only for knights themselves, but also for the societies they influenced. Even long after armor was set aside, the idea that moral responsibility accompanies strength persisted. Picture a quiet, knightly oath, taken centuries ago, still echoing in values taught in schools, literature, and social expectations, a subtle rhythm of honor shaping conduct in gentle ways. Knights also contributed to the structure and stability of medieval society through service to lords, protection of communities, and participation in governance, they reinforced social cohesion. The rhythms of patrol, training, and administration maintained order, secured trade routes, and nurtured communities. Imagine villages prospering under the quiet vigilance of a nearby knight, the soft reassurance of protection, creating a calm, steady rhythm that allowed daily life to flourish. Culturally, knights left an enduring mark. Tournaments, jousts, and ceremonies became celebrations of skill, discipline, and ritual, influencing art, music, and literature. Even today, the imagery of knights in shining armor evokes ideals of heroism and virtue. Picture the gentle sway of banners, the rhythmic clatter of hooves, and the soft resonance of lances in tournament fields, a dance of beauty and skill that left traces in paintings, stories, and collective imagination. Knights also impacted architecture and technology. Castles, fortifications, and weaponry innovations were shaped by their needs and skills. The rhythm of daily maintenance, training, and strategic use of these structures created a lasting imprint on landscapes and towns. Imagine a quiet castle courtyard where the careful design of walls, gates, and towers blends with the steady movements of knights and horses, a legacy both practical and symbolic. Education and mentorship were subtle but profound parts of their influence. Knights trained squires, imparted martial skills, social etiquette, and moral guidance. This passing of knowledge ensured that ideals, techniques, and principles endured across generations. Picture a squire kneeling attentively, absorbing lessons of courage, patience, and judgment, carrying forward the legacy of a life dedicated to service, honor, and reflection. Religious influence also shaped their legacy. Knight's connection with the church and spiritual practices left enduring traces of devotion, ritual, and moral guidance within communities. Pilgrimages, chapel construction, and acts of charity created patterns of service and reflection that persisted long after their campaigns ended. The quiet footsteps of a knight entering a chapel, the soft murmur of prayers, and the measured rhythm of ritual echoed through the moral and spiritual life of the communities they touched. Knights inspired ideals of mentorship and discipline, the gradual journey from the squire to knight, the careful cultivation of skill, and the patient attention to both body and mind left a framework for personal development that endured beyond the medieval period. Imagine generations of young people observing and emulating these patterns of calm, diligence, reflection, and steady growth, finding lessons in patience, responsibility, and ethical conduct. Even the mundane aspects of a knight's life, the care of armor, the polishing of swords, the maintenance of horses, became metaphors for diligence and discipline. These acts, repeated daily, quietly reinforce the importance of attention to detail, mindfulness, and steady effort. Picture the rhythmic motion of polishing steel, brushing horsehair, or tightening a leather strap. Each movement a small echo of the values knights embodied. Knights also influenced diplomacy and alliances. Their presence in courts, negotiations, and social rituals helped shape networks of trust, loyalty, and cooperation. The subtle rhythms of etiquette, observation, and careful judgment they practiced laid foundations for governance and social cohesion. Imagine a knight observing a council, offering advice, with measured calm and facilitating connections that carried influence beyond immediate action. Their legacy is also moral and symbolic. Knights embody the idea that courage, skill, and strength are most meaningful when tempered by wisdom, restraint, and service. Even in modern imagination, they remind us of the value of preparation, mindfulness, and ethical reflection. The quiet alignment of action and principle, demonstrated daily in medieval life, continues to inspire contemplation, aspiration, and moral awareness. In moments of reflection, a knight's legacy becomes visible in subtle ways. The careful consideration of action, the calm readiness to respond to challenges, and the gentle rhythm of preparation and mindfulness. These patterns, repeated quietly over centuries, shaped the social, cultural, and moral landscape far beyond individual deeds. Imagine standing in a quiet hall of memory, hearing the faint echoes of armor, swords, and footsteps, and sensing the enduring influence of lives lived with discipline, honor, and service. Allow your mind to drift with this vision. Feel the gentle resonance of courage, discipline, and moral clarity, the soft rhythm of careful preparation, and the quiet endurance of values carried through time. Knights and their legacy are more than history. They are a slow, meditative rhythm of honor, reflection, and calm presence, carrying you gently into serene thought and the gentle unfolding of dreams. Now, dear friend, imagine the soft glow of a fading sunset over quiet medieval landscapes, the gentle rustle of leaves in a calm evening breeze, and the faint, rhythmic clip-clop of a knight's horse walking slowly through a village lane. You have traveled through centuries of history, walked in the armor of knights, felt the weight of swords, and listened to the quiet cadence of life in castles, battlefields, and training grounds. From the first days of a squire, learning patience, humility, and skill, to the solemn ceremonies of knighthood, the careful rhythm of peacetime duties, the discipline of training, the intensity of tournaments, and the measured bravery of battle, you have explored the full spectrum of a knight's life. You have seen how their faith, honor, and moral code guided each action, how armor and weapons became extensions of body and mind, and how their presence shaped communities and inspired generations. Knights were more than warriors. They were protectors, mentors, administrators, and moral guides. Their legacy persists in stories, culture, architecture, and the quiet ideals of courage, service, and reflection. The rhythm of their lives, patience, preparation, observation, and careful action creates a gentle, meditative pattern that carries forward even into our imagination today. So now, as the last flicker of candlelight fades, let your mind rest in the calm presence of this history. Feel the soft weight of armor replaced by the warmth of understanding, the rhythmic pace of hooves replaced by the gentle rhythm of your breath, and the lessons of honor, service, and calm vigilance resting quietly in your mind. Now, with a smile on your face, you will have a good understanding of the life of a knight, their responsibilities, their challenges, and their enduring legacy. Close your eyes. Let the rhythm of this journey settle into your thoughts and drift into a deep, peaceful sleep. Goodbye, dear friend. See you next time.